9:15 on BBC One.
Thursday night here on BBC One with plenty to come tonight, including EastEnders at 7:30 and also something very special for Doctor Who fans a bit later. Getting things started now, though, with The One Show.
Hello and welcome to The One Show with Matt Baker.
And a very big and warm welcome back to Angela Scanlon. Who has had a baby.
I had a human.
How's life?
Yeah.
How's the family, Angela?
I know, that is weird. It's taken a little bit of getting used to.
Yeah.
She's there every morning.
She will
every
be.
single day.
Let's hope
It's
she's there when you
wonderful.
get back tonight.
Please, God. Yes, yes.
Listen, we've got a great show for you tonight. Good news if you are a James Bond fan, you will be shaken and stirred by today's announcement that the producers have found a new director for the next film after Danny Boyle left the project.
Yes, it is Kerry Fukunaga, director of True Detective. The bad news is you'll have to wait until Valentine's Day 2020 to see it.
Yeah, so in the meantime, who can possibly satisfy our thirst for fast cars, glamorous locations and ingenious gadgets?
I mean, there's only one man for the job.
Of course.
I'm not sure I've ever met a man quite like you.
You haven't.
Can I just ask, what is wrong with you? Did you or did you not burn the Côte du Roc restaurant to the ground? And did you fire a missile at a peloton of French cyclists?
Well,
Before commandeering an open-top bus and tossing the tour guide off the top deck?
Please welcome the stars of the latest Johnny English movie. It's Rowan Atkinson and Ben Miller. Good evening.
Come a little close.
What an arrival. How are you? Rowan, that was fine driving, sir. I'm driving my words.
There was a brief moment of panic there. I thought he's not going to
More
break.
than a moment.
well, more than the moment. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Ben. I know.
You're used to it this time.
Yeah, he is very used to it now.
Yeah, and Rowan, this is your Aston Martin.
Yes, this is mine, and it is the actual car in Johnny English Strikes Again, because we have a digital software billionaire as the enemy, as the villain in our movie, and so Johnny English's plan is to tackle him in a purely analog way. So it's an analog versus digital story. So we reject mobile phones and things like that, and
Old
so
school.
obviously an analog car was a very important part of that.
Yes. And when did this car come into your life?
Not very long ago. Actually, only about 6 months before the film. To be honest, I had the movie in mind when I bought the car. I thought that if the story that we were working on continues to be the story that we shoot, that I thought that this could be the car. And I just think it looks great. I think it looks really nice.
It's beautiful. I mean, you're famously a petrol head. Ben,
Yes.
not so much.
No.
I'm a passenger.
Okay. That's a bad passenger.
Professionally,
Passenger.
and
Yeah.
very much,
He's a
in
very
the automotive.
tolerant passenger.
But you find it hard to hang on to cars.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
No,
you
yes,
do,
I'm always
don't you?
losing mine. Yeah, Rowan is always finding cars. I'm always losing mine. I'm always to be found in the car park at my local station, searching up and down, trying to work out which of the many black Volkswagen Golfs belongs
How
to
long?
me.
How long have you lost a car for?
I've sometimes given up for days on end.
Okay.
Yeah, I've not been entirely sure which car park. Yeah.
Right.
I mustn't tell Rowan things like this. He'll never give me the keys to this.
No,
He hasn't given you a go, has he not?
No.
No. We did a lot of driving in the film. Though that is,
Yeah, we
I have
did.
to say that's all. When you can see it's us, it is us.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is us. Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot to get
Right.
through as
Yes,
far as Johnny
absolutely.
English is concerned this evening. We've already, of course, mentioned James Bond. And it's true to say that without James Bond, there would be no Johnny English.
So before we open the file on Rowan and Ben's latest mission, let's raise an eyebrow to the man who for many was the quintessential Bond, over to his friend and manager Gareth Owen.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Straight away I knew Roger was the perfect 007, suave, dangerous, and with a sense of humour. Since childhood I'd always been a big fan of Roger Moore, and I couldn't believe it when he asked me to work here at Pinewood Studios. It's a dream come true. I was just a film fan from Wales who came down here to try and break into the industry. Over those 16 years we became great friends, and I guess I saw another side of him that other people didn't get to know. Roger was a terrible hypochondriac. He had GPs and consultants, I think really in every city in the world. And he could never pass a chemist shop without stopping, going in to see what was on the shelves. And that resulted in him having this suitcase full of medicines that he carried around the world just in case. Roger may have seemed like the epitome of an English gentleman, but he had a very humble start in a flat in South London, in Stockwell. His father was a policeman and he left school at 15. Roger played Lord Brett Sinclair in The Persuaders, and it was a sort of very debonair part, really, and although he was born working class, he loved being typecast as the toff. Here is the Aston Martin DBS. Jeremy Levison, one of a legion of fans, bought it 4 years ago for, shall we say, a significant six-figure sum?
Rather more than it would have done had it not had the Roger Moore connection, but it's a thing of such beauty I couldn't resist.
Madeline Smith worked with Roger on The Persuaders, and I have to say, as a double act, they really clicked.
Please come in.
A real chemistry.
He had this half-amused air on screen which was just perfect.
Been expecting you, Miss Will.
He never ever took the scene too seriously, and yet he was absolutely dedicated and never a word out of place. He was the easiest person in the world, knowing not only my ridiculous lines, but also everybody else's. He had a photographic memory.
Roger bought this beautiful 5-bedroom house quite near to Pinewood Studios. Not exactly inexpensive. He was very careful with money and kept a close eye on his statements. When income tax was 96% in the pound, he and his family realised that they couldn't continue living here in this beautiful home. They would have to move abroad and become tax exiles. He was always a little nervous about any scripts he was sent. There was one he binned where he had to play a gigolo. He was very wary of being seen to swear on screen. He felt it would hurt his image. Bond was the part he'd always wanted, and when the call came in 1972, he made the part his own, a little less violence and a little more humour. The first of his 7 films was Live and Let Die, and guess who his very first Bond girl was? Well, they certainly looked like they had some fun filming that scene.
I actually couldn't believe it when I was offered this part. I think I got it because Roger recommended me. Of course, the watch wasn't actually magnetic, it was a toy watch. And so when he undid my zip, there was somebody, or several people, playing with the wire underneath my legs. He was completely unaware of the fact that he was a sex symbol. I can certainly understand why he was sort of #1, really, at the time.
He had a double to do some lighting setups and things, and he'd always sweep in and do whatever he needed to do in a couple of takes, no more. He'd disappear back to his trailer and read the newspaper. Or you'd find him in the Pinewood garden, usually eating an ice cream. Several years ago in an interview, Roger and other guests were asked somebody they'd like to write to and what they would say. Well, the other guests said Mandela, JFK, the Pope, asking far-reaching political questions. Roger said, well, I'd actually like to write to Mr. Walls and ask why he doesn't make a choc ice with a stick in it, because chocolate melts all down my fingers. Now, Roger laughed and he said, now, did the others hear from the Pope or Mandela or JFK? No. Did I hear from Mr. Walls? He devoted his last 25 years working as a UNICEF ambassador. He'd always told me he was prouder of his UNICEF work than he ever was of any of his film work. He wanted to see what Daniel Craig was like as Bond in the latest epic, so we went down to a local cinema, and of course Roger, being a senior citizen, was able to get a concession. Not really a typical 007 thing, is it? He was wowed by Daniel Craig and said to me, there's the real Bond. And when he died, Daniel Craig very sweetly returned the compliment.
Wonderful. What a lovely man he was, I tell you. We had him on the One Show. It was incredible to be in his presence.
Also, I love the image of him, you know, going into the cinema, using the old... Yeah, it's good. Rowan, he's your favourite Bond, right?
Well, he's... I'm not sure he's my favourite Bond, but I think he's Johnny English's favourite Bond.
Yes.
I feel that Johnny English, Johnny English is living this fantasy of being a fabulous secret agent, and I think he would identify more with Roger Moore than with any other Bond. I mean, simply because Johnny English just loves his job. He's not very good at it, but he adores the cars and the suits and the locations and, you know, and the whole exotic world of being a secret agent, at least as we depict it. So I think if you're in that frame of mind, then I think Roger Moore would be your perfect Bond.
The dream one. But you starred alongside Sean Connery.
Yes,
Never Say Never Again.
I've worked with the original. Yes, in A Never Say Never Again in 1983, sort of thing. Yes, and it was it felt like a real. It felt like an extraordinary thing because it was, I think, just about the first proper film that I'd ever made, and there I was, sitting in first class in a British Airways flight on my way to shoot a Bond movie in the Bahamas at the age of 27 or whatever I was.
Casual way to start.
Thinking this is how.
This is not concert.
In a rather Johnny English way. I thought this is how it should be. And it was fun actually. It was genuinely. And Sean Connery was very sweet.
Was he?
And the film was fine. And actually, what wasn't very fine, in my opinion, is my performance in it. Which it's just one of those things that you do when you're very young, and you think, this is the way to do it. And when I look at it now, I think, no, I wish I'd done something a little different. Anyway, pish.
Things have gone all right for your own section. But you were a big fan of Bond. It was your kind of first movie.
Yes, Roger Moore. The Man with the Golden Gun was the first Bond film that I went to see at a friend's birthday party. We were all taken to the local cinema in Crewe. That was the film that we saw. I was absolutely mesmerised. I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, I couldn't believe he had a golden gun with golden bullets, Rowan.
Had you been to the cinema before?
Never. No, I'd
really all sorts of things come up on the screen. Well, the thing all sorts of amazing things.
With the new Johnny English film, Johnny English Strikes Again, I mean, it's got a very glamorous feel because you're zipping around the south of France. Did it feel like you were in a proper, full-on Bond movie?
We shot bits of it in the same location.
Yes, and yes, on the Corniches in the south of France. We were there for only a few days. It would have been nice to have been there for a few weeks, but we weren't. So yes, we were we were certainly in that world. Yes, in his traditional locational world.
7 years since the first one. What has Johnny English been up to in that time?
I don't know. He's a fictional character, so I can't.
In this fictional world, Rowan, what has he been up to?
Completely, but where we pick him up, is as a geography teacher in a school in Lincolnshire.
Okay.
So that's what he's now doing in retirement.
For the day of filming.
Only for the duration of the film. And we have a plot which is remarkably similar to the beginning of the movie Skyfall, which is where all the British secret agents are compromised by a computer hack, and so there's no one to find out who's doing the hacking unless they bring someone out of retirement. So that is what Emma Thompson, as the Prime Minister, demands that the head of the Secret Service does, and for some reason, which we don't explain, the only one available is Johnny English. And so he gets the mission.
Okay. Right.
And as far as Boff is concerned, then your character, Ben, I mean, I guess half the battle must have been trying to keep a straight face through these, because it's like, it's kind of sketch after sketch after...
Funny enough, my battle is actually to remember that I'm not really in a Bond film. That we're
really?
That we are, that we are actually making a comedy. My temptation is to want to take it too seriously. But that kind of, that can add to the comedy sometimes. It seems like the more, the more in it you are. And the wonderful thing, of course, about this, the thing with the cyber villain, is that it brings in this whole theme of the analog digital, so that we kind of, Johnny needs all his old technology, and Boff is part of that. They say to him, and you said, "I'll need a Boff."
I'll need a Boff.
What's that?
Which I do. Well, a Boff actually is someone who's going to tolerate the weirdness and eccentricity and ludicrous over-ambition of Johnny English. That is what Ben plays so fantastically well. That accommodation of Johnny, because all the time he's coming up with the most ludicrous ideas, which Boff, he can't say no, I'm not going to do that, because he's the subordinate.
Well, we see them in action here trying to tackle the villain.
Here's a ludicrous idea for you.
Right, Boff. Our aim is to get on board without anyone noticing. And how we're going to do it? Magnetic boots. Brilliant, sir. Remember, the absolutely vital element of this mission is surprise.
11 and 9. They're huge Johnny English fans anyway. I mean, is there a conscious effort to make this like a family movie? Yeah.
No, there's no real conscious effort. It just, you know, when we did the first one a long time ago, 2001, that we made the movie, you know, we made the movie that we wanted to make about Johnny English, this spy who's not as good as he thinks he is. And we ended up with this very broad family audience, which was not expected particularly. But now, obviously, we now know that is the audience for Johnny English. And it's relatively rare I mean, family comedies generally are quite rare now, unless they're animation.
Yeah,
you know, live action family comedies are actually quite a few on the ground.
Yeah. And I would imagine those gadgets that we see you guys using in the film are especially retro to a young audience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, even, you know, tape cassettes, you know, we play, the mixtape. The mixtape goes in, and I think, I wonder what 11-year-old thinks about the idea. You know, what is this thing?
They're Googling it.
You know, what is the mixtape? What is this weird plastic thing with the two spindles spinning around?
Is that you through and through? Are you into your tech, or are you quite old school?
A little bit. I'm certainly reasonably, you know, digital savvy. But you know, I don't do social media at all because I find it extremely relaxing not to do it. but I you know, I've got all the usual digital guff, but at the same time that I love analog stuff, you know.
I love mechanical gadgets and things. I like collecting, you know, like, and you can find these old lovely old cameras and old typewriters, and I think that's a very. I recently bought an LP player. I'm really up with the times.
Fancy.
Absolutely vinyl.
Yeah, I've returned to vinyl, Rowan.
It's very trendy these days.
Yeah, absolutely, we call it vinyl. I mean, actually, when you play a vinyl record, you know, there's no, you know, not only does it take you back in time, but it's the physicality of it. You know, there's no doubt there's something there rather than just.
Well, the movie is out. Johnny English Strikes Again. It's out on the 5th of October. Now, maybe you grew up watching Rowan in Not the 9 O'Clock News, Blackadder or Mr. Bean. He has been making us laugh for 40 years.
Yes, everyone has their very own favourite Rowan moment. Here are a few of yours.
He's just got such an animated face, his expressions.
His body language, it just makes me laugh. I love him, my parents loved him.
It just makes you laugh just by looking at him.
I first saw him on Not the 9 O'Clock News.
I was supposed to be in bed, but I would sit at the top of the stairs and try and watch it from the top of the stairs whenever I could.
My first memory really is Blackadder.
Your brain, for example, is so minute, Baldrick, that if a hungry cannibal cracked your head open, there wouldn't be enough inside to cover a small water biscuit.
My favourite one of all time was when he said,
I've got a plan so cunning you could put a tail on it and call it a weasel.
That was brilliant.
The Tudor times are definitely my favourite, because they're rude.
Turn it, my lady.
The turnip. The thingy-shaped turnip. My dad used to always make us look for thingy-shaped things after that.
Mr. Bean is so funny because just there's so many scenes that you can pick from.
For some reason, he's meeting the Queen, and there's a row of people, and he goes to bow and headbutts her by accident.
One of my earliest memories on TV was seeing him buying the chair and rolling down the hill in the yellow Mini.
Where he's using the sofa on the top of the car and he was steering the car.
The one who put his head in the turkey and he got stuck and...
My favourite scene is probably his dancing one with Mr. Shaggy when he comes on in his little dance. That's fantastic.
She call me Mr. Bombastic, tell me fantastic. Put me on me box, she says I'm Mr. Rose.
He's daft, you know, he's clumsy, he overthinks things. Basically, he's like a grown-up child.
When I think of Rowan Atkinson, I think of the Four Winds in the Funeral when he was the vicar.
May Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Bravo! My favourite scene from Johnny English is probably when Johnny English dancing around in his bathroom, you know, no top on, shower cap on, and he's playing the drums with his toothbrushes.
where he's in a motorised wheelchair speeding through Admiralty Arch. Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that bit.
It's quite silly, really, and people can connect with that.
Strong mind can separate the body from its suffering.
Good concentration, English.
Sorry?
Hi! 100% he is most certainly a British comedy legend.
Nobody executes it as well as him, and he's got a unique style of comedy.
He's my favourite comedian. He's my favourite of all times.
I think they enjoyed it. Ben, you must be feeling a little left out here.
Can we do mine? Can we do my one?
Yeah, sorry, there's no time for that.
What's your favourite Rowan moment?
Funnily enough, Mr. Bean's Holidays, I know there was a clip from Mr. Bean's Holiday with the dancing there. I love the bit where you go past, where you grab on, you're on a bicycle, you grab onto the back of the van and then you go firing off past the peloton.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Cyclist.
There you are.
Why? What is it about that one?
Well, it's this shot here coming up.
Yeah, it's the actual.
It's this comparison shot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
It's the touch.
They cycled very slowly.
Don't look like it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think, but I remember being shattered by that day of filming. I remember that.
Strong thighs.
Where did Mr. Bean come from?
I don't know, really. He came actually from the fact that Richard Curtis and I were once sitting in a rehearsal room trying to think up sketches to do in the comedy reviews that we used to do in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And Richard's and I always wanted to do visual comedy because I'd been very inspired by a French comedian in particular called Jacques Tati. And I thought, and Richard said, well, why don't we just do a sketch about a man who can't stay awake? So that was the starting point, and which actually eventually turned into a sketch set in a church, which was in the very first Mr. Bean when he can't. And then we did it again actually in a comic relief thing that we saw a little clip of there. So it started just from a situation and how I would react as a performer when presented with the acting job, if you like, of making a man trying to stay awake when, but he's desperate to fall asleep. Yeah. So that's where it started, really, and then we developed it from there.
I guess that the lack of language really in it means it's so universally loved and accessible.
Yeah.
Was that deliberate from the start, or?
It was semi-deliberate, yeah. I think it was based on a holiday I had in Venice in 1985 with Stephen Fry, actually. The two of us just went to Venice on this strange sort of 3-week transcontinental tour. And I remember being in Venice, and at the time it was kind of, music of Duran Duran, and I thought, how interesting that so many musical performers will automatically assume an international audience for what they do, whereas comedy performers always assume a more parochial, national audience.
Yeah.
And I thought, surely, if I have any skill or if I have any interest in visual comedy, maybe there's a way of finding a character which could perform internationally and be accepted.
OK. I like the idea of you and Stephen Fry as a double act. You also have somebody that you have a special connection with, don't you? Bromancy type.
Oh, Alexander.
Yes.
Yes.
No, not Alexander.
Well, we've got this picture here, actually. We'll put this up. Look. Now, what's the story that's going on with this here?
Right, yes. So this is... I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I was going to announce a film. And I was very excited because I was met at the airport. It's unusual for me, Rowan. Usually I'm asked to make my own way there. And I was driven to this hotel, welcomed by all the staff, swept upstairs. They threw open these double doors, this fabulous suite at the top of the Majestic Hotel in Cannes. And I went over to the fruit bowl display after the entire team had left, sort of closing the double doors, and there was a card saying, "Welcome to the Majestic Hotel, Mr. Ben Stiller."
Very good.
I was expecting Zoolander on the couch tonight.
Yeah. Very good.
I presume he was in the Holiday Inn somewhere.
Yeah, I assumed that you carried on. Yeah.
I carried on.
Did you?
I called all my friends and invited them.
Yes. Now, famously, Richard Curtis said, Rowan, that you find almost nothing funny.
Apart from that.
quote. Apart from that.
I found that comment very funny. It's difficult to make me laugh, to be honest, and I'm not particularly proud of that fact. But I suppose whenever I hear a joke or I see something funny or I watch a comedian or something, that there must be something in me that's analysing it, too much and just thinking, that's not great.
Picking it apart.
That's quite good. Yeah.
Is there anyone in particular that actually you find you don't analyse and you can laugh at?
Well, certainly when I was young, virtually anything that John Cleese did in Monty Python's Flying Circus, and then Fawlty Towers, that he was a great hero of mine, and then maybe more recently Dame Edna Everage, Barry Humphries' character. There's something about her absurd, sort of suburban, outrageous kind of bigoted view of the world, which makes me laugh a lot. So there are people, but I like character comedy. I like acted comedy far more than I like stand-up. So, and because stand-up now, of course, is the thing, and so slightly less interesting to me.
Well, much like Johnny English, George McGavin never shies away from a mission.
Tonight he's on the hunt for the elusive Edinburgh butterfly. I know.
Yeah.
Edinburgh, no less.
Arthur's Seat, Holyrood Park and the Scottish National Parliament. All such famous landmarks that I hardly need tell you I'm in Edinburgh. But I'm on the lookout for an altogether smaller Edinburgh icon. The northern brown Argus is proudly referred to as Edinburgh's butterfly. But industrialisation and overzealous collectors led to it being wiped out from the city by the 1870s. So it was something of a surprise when a tiny population was rediscovered in Holyrood Park. Anthony McCluskey from Butterfly Conservation Scotland is my guide. Now, what are the chances that we might see one today?
We know where it should be and what it feeds upon, so I think we've got a good chance today.
Let's go find one.
Let's go.
Or two. Northern brown Argus caterpillars only feed on one plant, the not-so-common common rock rose.
So this is the kind of place where we might expect to see the plant and the butterfly.
Right, eyes peeled. You've got foxglove, bramble, little flower.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
What?
There, Northern brown Argus just flying
Correct.
up there.
See it? There it is. I've got it. The butterflies only exist in tiny populations of tens of individuals. Because they're fussy eaters and rarely venture more than 100 metres from where they hatch, they are very vulnerable. Anthony's team have joined forces with the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, to create a very simple series of stepping stones to help these unadventurous butterflies spread across the city. But it's a lot harder for us to access than the butterflies. We are heading up onto a rooftop at the Scottish Parliament building here at Holyrood. Right, Anthony, what have you got?
So we've got some common rock rose here. Just this...
That's quite hidden away, isn't it?
Yeah, these little yellow flowers.
So that's it. That's what they're after.
Yeah.
It may not look like much, but planting these small patches of flowers on the roofs should be enough to encourage the butterfly to be a little more adventurous. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a brilliant spot and it's so close to places where some of these rare butterflies live, so we're hoping that they will just hop over onto this new site we've created for them.
Yeah, which isn't very far away. The Edinburgh Living Landscape Project currently has rock rose planted on 9 rooftops across the city. So it's a bit like joining up the dots.
It is, yeah, and because butterflies can fly, they can get through the roads and the buildings in between.
Over the next few years, the project aims to plant roofs from Holyrood Park to the Firth of Forth. Anthony hopes that eventually these little beauties will be once again a common sight in Edinburgh, and that by using the stepping stones in the sky, there will be a continuous population throughout southern Scotland.
Thank you, George. Now, obviously, we're at the end of summer now, so we're out in kind of butterfly season. But look out next May, because that'll be the time when hopefully the Northern brown Argus will be booming again.
Rampant they will be. Thank you so much to Rowan and Ben for sharing the sofa with us this evening.
Wonderful company you have been fantastic. Thank you
very much. Johnny English Strikes Again is out on the 5th of October.
Alex will be back tomorrow chatting to father and son duo Michael and Jack Whitehall, and there'll be music from Sophie Ellis Bextor. From all of us here, good night.
Good night.